expect to be here tomorrow.
What?
I don't expect to be here tomorrow. I'm going to be traveling.
Okay. Safe trip. Okay. Year of Learning, Sue and Aaron Gerlich, in memory of Malka Pearl Man and Philip Man, and Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Henya Rivka Pearl Rosner, Bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, and in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Cheryl share her children and grandchildren in memory of her uncle, founding member of DRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva. Marcia Fetterbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Oriel Paul Fetterbush, Oriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon. Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edelbas Yaakov. Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell, and Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, and Martha Gitler, Charna Bas Yeshaya. The children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, in her memory. Friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim. Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine, in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachumata bat Asher. Have a month of learning by Mordechai and Miriam Burr, in memory of his father, Yaakov ben Mordechai. Friends from Yarmouth E, in memory of Miriam and Michael Schiffer's son, Zev David ben Shimon Halevi. David and Mindel Cheslow, in memory of his mother, Bela Bas Meir. Marcia Fetterbush, in memory of her husband, Oriel ben Harav Shimon. Gary and Marcia Schrager, in memory of his father, David ben Yosef, and his mother, Freda Bas Hendel. A week of learning by Shelley and Oscar Moll, in memory of her father, Shlomo Reuben ben Binyamin. Larry Fish and Vicky Rubinovich Fish, in memory of his father, Avram David ben Shlomo Raphael, and his mother, Batya Chaya bat Yisrael Yitzchak. Have a day of learning by Zahava Baum, in memory of her father-in-law, Reuven ben Moshe, and by Jack and Sheila Prince, in memory of his father, Shmuel Dov ben Yaakov. May the Shamas have an Aliyah, Kranker Rafia, Velti Yashir, Hashem Atalia, Machal b'nai Israel, a good gebench.
Amen.
Harvey, you with us this morning? I don't hear you or see you. Hope everything's okay. All right. We got to the Mishnah on Kaf Zayin Amud Aleph yesterday. Okay, so that's where we're going to start up again. This morning, Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Okay, but I just want to connect the fact that, remember, we had the stories previously where it talked about giving somebody a certain amount of food, and they said, well, we'll bring it into the sukkah, whereas someone else was given the food stuff and they held it in their hand with a handkerchief or a napkin, and not only didn't say a bracha on it, but they didn't.
Said a bracha.
Oh, said a bracha. Didn't bracha. Okay, so the implication clearly was at the end of the Gemara there that it had to be equivalent to a beya. Okay, since that the Gemara was dealing with the issue of foodstuffs, the next Mishnah, our new Mishnah, also is going to pick up on that topic.
This was Rav Tzadok, who was the Kohen Gadol,
Okay.
fasted for 40 years.
Okay, well, we'll see where he's brought in at some point. Okay, So I just want to make that connection so that we see the flow of the Gemara, right? And that's where we'll pick up. A reminder also that I think it's as of coming up shortly that we will need volume 2. If you're using, what? Yeah, well, we're on Kaf Zion today, so that's what I'm saying. It's coming up shortly.
If you haven't bought it yet, it's too late.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's late. It's late.
When do we need the lap volume 2?
Today's the 3rd. You need it
Thursday.
Thursday.
2 days.
In 2 days. Right? Okay, Matnitin says our Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer says, what does he say? Arba esrei seudot chayav adam le'achol b'sukkah. That one is obligated to eat 14 meals in the sukkah. Now, I want to point out that Rabbi Eliezer is not including in his statement the requirement of the very first night. Okay? That is a situation where everybody agrees that it's mandatory.
So
Okay?
you're saying that does include the Shalashidis things, not common.
No, we're not talking about Shalashudis at all. We're saying the first night of the holiday, okay, it's not included in his 14.
So that means it includes Shalashidis.
Maybe, we'll see. Okay? Right? We'll see. Let's hold on and we'll see what the issue is.
No, he was-
All he's saying is that 14 meals, okay? But he's not counting that very first, right? Now, what happens? Okay, right? Echat b'yom ve'echat b'layl. One during the day and one at night. Now, that may seem to imply that they only ate 2 meals a day on a regular basis. And now we understand why. Okay, it might be that they included shalashim. Okay, well, we'll see. The Chachamim omrim, ein l'davar kitzvah, chutz milei yom tov rishon shel chag bilvad. And the sages say that you don't have a set amount, a set time. Okay, in other words, a set number of meals required in the sukkah, with the exception of that very first night of Sukkot itself. Okay, va'od, and furthermore, another statement in our Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, he says, Mi shelo achal leile yom tov harishon, yashlim leile yom tov hacharon shelcha. One who missed for some reason eating in the sukkah the very first night of the Sukkot holiday must fill it. In other words, replace it, if you will, okay, make it up, okay, on the last night of the holiday. Now, what does it mean? Wait. What does it mean last night of the holiday? Yom Tov Acharon Shel Chag. Okay, so the question is going to be, is he talking about Shmini Atzeres or not? Remember, Shmini Atzeres is a machloket whether you have to eat in the sukkah or not. Okay.
No, according to them, it was Asher. We say it's a machloket.
Right. Well, we'll see. Let's go on. V'chachamim amrim ein ledavar tashlumin. The sages say there is no making up, right? Va'al zeh ne'amar, and on this they cite a pasuk, ma'ot lo yuchal letkon, v'chisaron lo yuchal limanot. That the crooked can't be made straight, and that missing can't be recounted, so to speak.
That's not so. If you miss a davening, you can make.
But they're just saying, no, there's that may refer to Shmona Esrei, but they're saying in terms of making up that missed meal for the holiday. That's assuming that you hold by Rabbi Eliezer. Okay? Now, Gemara, my time with the Rabbi Eliezer, what was his thinking? What was his perspective? Teishvu, says the pasuk, that you should dwell. Ke'ein taduru, that the same way you eat, okay, in your normal residence, so you should be eating likewise in the sukkah. Madira achat bayom ve'achat balayla. The same way in your normal residence, you have one meal in the, let's say, morning and one meal in the evening. Okay? Af sukkah echat bayom ve'achat balayla. So in the sukkah, one in the morning and one in the evening. Okay, the
They eat
rabbiner.
only 2 meals a day.
What that implies that they generally ate only 2 meals a day. In other words, it could be that they had, brunch, exactly. They could have eaten it around, if they were working the field,
Early in
then
the
it
morning.
makes sense, right? That they would have gone out the field, then eaten a little later in the morning, and then once it gets dark, they come home and eat. So that would have been here.
Okay, the point is, there were no unions, so there was no lunch. break.
Michael, all right, Sid, yeah.
If the first day, which was in Eretz Yisrael, which you couldn't accommodate to fulfill the mitzvah, but if it was in Baronia and out of Eretz Yisrael, when there was a second day, can he fulfill the mitzvah in the second day, not the first day?
Good question. Good question. We'll have to see. Uh-huh.
The
Okay,
Gemara talks about it.
No.
well, let's see. I don't want to jump ahead.
I understand.
Right, but it's a good question. Okay, so he says, Avsuka echad b'yom echad b'layla. B'Rabbanan, as far as the rabbis go, kidira, when it says that one is in the sukkah like their normal habitation, right? Madira, ibai achil, ibai lo achil. With regards to one being in their home, if one chooses or needs to eat, one eats. If one doesn't need to eat, one doesn't eat, right? Right? Af sukkah, nami ibai achil. If one in the sukkah, if one needs to eat, one eats. Ibai lo achil. Okay? Lo achil. Okay? That there too, if one's not hungry, one doesn't. Ihachi, if that's the case, continuing in the middle of the Amud. Afilu leila yom tov rishon nami. Maybe I should apply that to the very first night of the Chag of Sukkot. If I'm not hungry or whatever reason, then I shouldn't have a real obligation to be there, to have to eat in there. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzedek. Okay, Ne'emar Kan Chamisha Asa. Okay, citing another pasuk, it says the 15th. V'ne'emar Chamisha Asa b'Chag Hamatzot. And the Torah also says that Pesach, okay, regarding the first night as being the right. Well, we're going to get to that, right? The holiday of Matzot being the 15th. Malahalan Laila Harishon Chova, the same way that there on Pesach, the first night, there is an obligation to eat matzah, right? Right, Marvin? All right, Ve'elach Reshut, and after that, it is discretionary. Afkan, Laila Harishon Chova. Okay, so here too, the first night is obligatory. Mikan Ve'elach Reshut, and from thereafter, it is discretionary. Vahata Minalan. So the Gemara logically asks, and there, in regards to Pesach, what is the basis that we say that it's prove it, right? Right? Of Amar Kra, we have a pasuk, Be'erev tochlu matzot. An evening you shall eat matzot, Tuv kav'u chova. And therefore, from the Torah text itself, we have the obligation. Okay. V'odamar Rabbi Eliezer. Further, we go back now to the next part of the mission. Okay? V'ha'amar Rabbi Eliezer. Arba asrei su'udot chayav adam lechol b'sukkah. That the Rabbi Eliezer says that 14 meals one is obligated to eat in the sukkah. Okay, when are those? Echad b'yom ve'echad b'layla. One in the morning and one at night. Now, Amar Bira Amar Reb Ami. So we have a new sage that is cited in the name of Reb Ami. Chazar bo Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer recanted that statement. Now, what does it mean? Mashlim b'mai. But what about the issue that he said about making it up? What about that situation? So let's see if it addresses your question, Sid, right? Ilema berifta. If you're, say, making it up by simply having bread, the su'uda diyome ka'achi, okay? That is the meal for that day that he's eating. In other words, for that holiday itself. Elamai yashlim. So what do we mean when we say he makes it up? Yashlim b'minei targima, that he makes it up by eating a variety of delicacies or special refreshments. Tanya nami hachi, and we have a brighter.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
when does he say Shepherd?
Good question. Let's see, maybe the Gemara is going to address it. Okay. Tanya nami hachi, and we have a brighter that teaches this as well. Im heshlim b'minei targima, if, notice the language of the brighter. If, right, if he tries to make up the meal that he missed, okay, using delicacies or special refreshments, right? Yatsa, then he's fulfilled his obligation. Sha'al, so what happens? A little story. Sha'al apotropos, shall Agrippus Hamelech. The apotropos is the steward or the governor of the local area. Okay, no. It's not the butler in this case. Okay, it's based on a Greek term that actually was used for governor because Agrippus was not well liked in Galilee. And so the king never traveled up to the Galilee, and he had appointed a separate governor, okay, to handle things there. Okay, that's quoting Corinth. Okay, so what happens? Agrippus shall Agrippus at Rabbi Eliezer. So he asks him, "What about me, Kagon Ani? She'eni ragil echol ela suda achat bayom." I'm only used to eating one meal a day. Now, what does that mean, that he only ate one meal a day? Okay. In other words, he ate because he was the governor. He may have traveled throughout the northern area, Galilee, and he only had one kavua, one set meal. In other words, a day. That doesn't mean he didn't nash throughout, snack throughout the day. Okay. So that was our clarification. Mahu she'ochel su'da achat ve'epater. Shall it be that I eat just the one meal in the sukkah, okay, and then I will be exempt? I will be satisfied. Amar lo. So he says, "B'chol yom v'yom atam mamshich kama parparot l'chvod atzmacha." Throughout the day, you enjoy a number of. One translation was appetizers, another snacks, light meals, whatever. Okay, for yourself, to benefit yourself. But it's not possible for you to have at least one of these appetizers in honor of your maker, your creator. Okay, in other words, if you're traveling, that's why I said, if you're traveling around the Galilee and you have one set meal, fine. So in one of those other locations, you'll have one of your snacks in a sukkah. That's the implication, right? Va'od shalu. And then they asked, right? Kigon ani, like myself, he says. Sheyesh li shtei nashim. Here's a good one. All right. I have two wives. Echad b'Tiberia ve'echad b'Tzipori. One in Tiberias and one in Tzipori. Now, we don't know if that's the same governor who said this or not.
They both say, Quran and
Okay.
Artsville both say it's the same guy.
All right, but with either case, all right, remember Tiberias is way up in the north, okay, and the other was on the coast, right? V'yesh lo shtei sukkot, and he has two sukkahs. Echad b'Tveria ve'echad b'Tzipori. One in Tiberias and one in Sepphoris. Mahu she'etzei misukah l'sukah ve'epater. Is it possible that I could eat, in one sukkah, one meal, and another sukkah, the other meal, right? Which theoretically, in other words, in the morning, He could eat one location, and the evening he could eat another location, theoretically, right? Well, we'll see. Amarlo.
Am I required to have a sukkah at each of the homes of my wives?
Don't tell you, all right? Low, and that's what I would think she would tell you, okay? אני אומר, כל היוצא מסוכה לסוכה, בטל מצוותה של הראשונה. That if they do that, okay,
Even the first one.
the first one is not done. Tanya Rabbi Eliezer. And therefore Rabbi Eliezer now teaches the following Braita. Omer ein yotzin misukah lesukah. One does not go from one sukkah to another, right? Which is interesting because today that's a very common youth activity. I know, they're going to get to that, but I just want to point that out, that youth groups often do that, have a meal where they go sukkah.
You get invited to the Schwartz?
Right. Ve'eno sin sukkah b'cholo shel moed. And also Rabbi Eliezer says you cannot build, if you didn't build it before the holiday, you cannot build that sukkah during Chol HaMoed. Now, the Chachamim omrim, but the sages are going to disagree. All right, and say yotzin mi sukkah lesukkah, that it is permissible to go from one sukkah to another. Va'osin sukkah b'cholo shel moed, and it is permissible if you didn't get to build it or set it up or repair. Okay, right before the yontif, you can do it during Chol HaMoed. V'shavin she'im nafla, and they all agree. Okay, namely Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim, that if the sukkah fell down during Chol HaMoed, shechozer uboneh b'cholo shel moed. Okay, that you rebuild it during Chol HaMoed. Okay, my time with the Rabbi Eliezer. What was Rabbi Eliezer's thinking? Amar Kra, based on a pasuk. Chag Sukkot ta'aseh lecha shivat yamim. Okay, that's the pasuk. Asa sukkah haru'uya l'shiva, namely that one should build their sukkah such that it is a viable entity for the entire 7 days. Right? V'rabanan, and according to the rabbis, hachi ka'amar Rachman. This is what the Torah is telling us. Aseh sukkah bechad, make the holiday, make a sukkah for the holiday of Sukkot. V'shavin, and they agree. She'im nafla, shechozer boneh ota b'cholo shel moed. And that if it comes down, one rebuilds it during the intermediate days of the holiday. Shita. Doesn't that seem to be obvious? Mahu detema. What then is it trying to tell you? Hai acharitehi. Okay, in a second. Ve'ena l'shiv'a kamash malan. Okay, so what is that? What is that trying to clarify when it says, okay, hai acharite? Okay, in other words, that the sukkah is a different kind of structure, right? Maybe that's the problem, all right? Okay, if that's the case, right? Ve'ena l'shiv'a. And if that's the case, if you only built it during Chol HaMoed, okay, it doesn't fulfill, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the requirement of 7 days, right? Kamash Malan, says the Gemara, comes to teach us that's not the case. We don't paskin in this case like Rabbi Eliezer, okay, instead. Now, new bright. Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, further. Kashem she'ein adam yotzei yedei chovato b'yom tov harishon shel chag belulavo shel chavero. The same way that a person does not fulfill his obligation on the very first day of the holiday of Sukkot with a lulav that belongs to his neighbor. Dichtiv, why? Because the pasuk is written, "Ulekachtem lachem b'yom harishon pre-eitz hadar kapot marim." Okay, I don't think I have to translate it completely, but you're right, you shall take. And I'm understanding lakach here is the you purchase also, which is the double entendre of that phrase, okay, that you purchase for yourself for the first day, right? That the lulav and etc., right? Mishelachem, it must be yours. Kach ein adam yotzei yedei chovato. So likewise, Rabbi Eliezer is thinking, a person does not fulfill his obligation bisukato shel chavero, in the sukkah of his neighbor. Dichtiv, as written in the pasuk, Chag HaSukkot ta'aseh lecha shivat yamim, that you shall make the holiday of Sukkot for 7 days. Mishelcha, lecha, mishelcha, for yourself. Right? Now, what happens? What does the sages say? The Chachamim Omrim, and the sages say, Afa pisha amru, ein adam yotzei yedei chovato b'yom tov rishon, v'lulavo shel chavero, even though the sages agree with Rabbi Eliezer that you can't use your neighbor's lulav, aval yotzei yedei chovato b'sukato shel chavero. But you can fulfill the obligation of dwelling in the sukkah using your neighbor's sukkah. As it's written, Dichtiv, Kol ha'ezrach b'Yisrael yeshvu b'sukkot. Every citizen of Israel, in other words, every Israelite citizen should be dwelling in the sukkah. Melamed shekol Yisrael ru'uyim le'shev b'sukkah achat. That all of Israel, in other words, would be that you had such a huge sukkah that they theoretically could fit every Jew into that sukkah. Okay, all right, that would be good. Okay, all right. The Rabbanan, and according to the rabbis, how did they understand that Ta'aseh lecha Shivat Yamin, right? V'Rabbanan Hai Lecha Mai Darshe Be. This word Lecha for you, how did they interpret it? Mibaye Le Lemeute Gezula. They used it to interpret it to eliminate one who was using a sukkah that was made from stolen parts. Okay, Aval She'ula, but if one was borrowing, okay, parts, ktiv, where it's written, kol ha'ezrach. Why? Because there, all right, it says every citizen. The Rabbi Eliezer, okay, what about him? Hi, kol ezrach. How did he interpret the idea of every citizen? Okay, my avidble, what did he do with it? Mibayele lager shenitgayer bein tayim. He used it to understand the reason for the obligation for a convert who converted during the time. Okay, in other words, between first days of Sukkot and last days of Sukkot. Okay, v'katan shenit gadel b'intayim, or a minor that became adult also during the interim time. Okay, the Rabbanan, and as far as the rabbis go, kevan she'amru oseh sukkah b'cholo shel moed, since the rabbi said that it's permissible to build a sukkah during the intermediate days, lo itztarich kra, they felt there was no need to darshan that pasuk in that manner. Okay, we come now to a new bright, right? Tanu Rabbanan, a new bright is telling us, Maaseh Rabbi Eli, Shahalach lahakbil pnei Rabbi Eliezer Rabo Belud Beregel. Okay, that Rabbi Eli went to visit, okay, his teacher. Remember we said the other day that that was considered a mitzvah, okay, to visit one's teacher on the Yontif, okay? And where did he go? To Lud. Why is that important to mention? Because again, like we saw the other day, that Caesarea was a major city, had its own yeshiva, and Tanaim and Moraim had lived there. Lud also, remember, was an important city Okay.
Eliezer was the Maridasu.
Right, okay,
At the airport.
all right, I don't know about that. So, and anyway, he went to visit him Beregel,
You know why?
all right, Marlo, and he said to him, now notice what he says. Elai calls him, right? Eincha meshuvati haregel. Okay, and I'm going to translate that a little bit loosely as, why don't you stay at home for the holiday? Okay, in other words, shouldn't you be at home with the holiday with your
Because if
wife
you change
and your
somebody's
family?
mindset,
And of course, the whole issue of changing sukkah. Shahaya Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Okay, because Rabbi Eliezer used to say, Mishabeach ani et ha'atzlanim. I commend those, quote, in quotes, lazy individuals, right? She'ein yotzim mibateihen b'regel, that they don't leave their homes during the holiday of, right, of Sukkot. Dichtiv, why? Because, and here, by the way, it's not just Sukkot. He's implying other holidays as well, okay? Pesach, Shavuos, etc. Why? V'samachta ata ubeitecha, that you should rejoice, you and your household. And who do we mean by household? One spouse. Okay, think again of the whole issue. By the way, I'm tying it to what we were learning elsewhere on Yom Kippur, okay, where the Kohen Gadol has to be married, right? Okay, Eini, is that really the case? V'ha'amar Rabbi Yitzchak, and didn't Rabbi Yitzchak say as follows? Minayin shechayav adam lahakbil pnei rabo b'regel. On what basis is it that we say that they had the custom of visiting their Rebbe, their
we're all
teacher?
coming to sukkahs, by the way.
I don't know. Okay, Shnei Amar, as it says, Umadua at holechet elav hayom lo chodesh v'lo Shabbat. Famous story of the woman who would go, right, to and her, all right, and her husband says, "How come you're going today to visit?" Right, for Yom, right? Miklal the bechodesh v'Shabbat mechayev inish lahakbule avpei rabbe. From this we learn that for the Rosh Chodesh or Shabbos, one has an obligation to greet, okay, or visit the face of their teacher. Lo kasha, says the Gemara, this is not problematic. Ha, the azil va'ate biyome. In one case, we're saying they go and come on the same day, right? Same day. You go and come the same day. Ha, the azil velo ate biyome. And here, elsewise, we're talking about they come and they aren't able to come back on the same day. Tanu Rabbanan, a new Braita. Maaseh Rabbi Eliezer, Sheshavat beGalil ha'ayom. We have an incident where Rabbi Eliezer was spending, I'm assuming Shabbos or the Yontif, okay, beGalil ha'ayom, in the upper Galilee. Besukato shel Yochanan beRebbi Eli beKizari. And where was he spending it? In the sukkah of Yochanan, the son of Rabbi Eli in Caesarea. Va'amre la beKesari. And others say it wasn't Caesarea, but it was Caesarion, which was a whole different city. One, by the way, is Caesarea, remember, is on the coast, and Caesarion is way, way up in the north, almost all the way up to Metula. Okay, so there's a big difference, okay, in location. All right, Vehigia Chama the sukkah. And what happened? He's there in the sukkah, and the sun starts shining in on the sukkah. Amarlo. So this is his host. Yochanan is trying to be a good host, and he says to him, "Ma'u she'efros aleh sadim? Shall I spread a sheet to protect the Rebbe from the
Sunburn.
extreme sun. Okay. Amarlo, he responds, Ein lecha kol shevet v'shevet miYisrael shelo ha'amid mimenu shofet. You don't have any tribe among the Jewish people that never produced a judge. In other words, number one, he didn't want to answer the question directly.
And he changed
And
the
number
subject.
two, he decided to move the subject to a different topic as if to imply everybody should be able to come up with a logical answer on their own. Furthermore, says the story, "Higia chama lechatzi hasukkah." Now the sun is directly overhead of the sukkah, shining directly down. Amarlo. So again, is a good host. Mahu she'efros aleh sabim. Shall I spread again a sheet over? Amarlo, he said to him, Ein lecha kol shevet v'shevet miYisrael shelo yatzu mimenu nevi'im. Okay, you have no tribe that didn't produce prophets. Again, did not directly answer the question. No, okay, I know. Okay, but again, what happens? Shevet Yehuda uBinyamin ha'emidu melachim al pi nevi'im. Okay, and the tribes, in other words, the joint tribes of Judah and Benjamin established a kingship. In other words, that was going to be when the tribes split. Okay, after Benjamin was Saul, Yehuda was David, and therefore that became the monarchy, the line of the kingship. Right? Al pi nevi'im. Okay, why was it Al pi nevi'im? Remember, it was Shmuel that or made David.
Shaul was from Binyamin. and
Right,
David
yeah, but it was,
from
but it was a prophet who established them by anointing. Okay, Higia chama lemargelotav shel Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, the sun began to beat down on his feet.
Right.
Okay, his legs. All right, that's another issue for another time. Okay, all right.
Not every shevet had judges, and not every shevet.
Yes, they all did.
Okay, they,
Yes.
Not a king.
Okay.
Benjamin and
How about
Yehuda.
Nevi- Nevi'im?
Every king had Nevi'im, and every tribe had Nevi'im, and
They
every
did.
tribe had
Yeah.
Shepherds.
Yeah. now again, Natal Yochanan Sadin, who Peresh Alei, all right, he took a sheet and spread it, right? If Shil Rabbi Eliezer Talito, Ma'achurav. And Rabbi Eliezer sort of
His jacket
threw
on,
his jacket on and walked out, right? V'yatsa, and he left. Lo mipnei shehifligu b'dvarim, not because he argued with his words. Elo mipnei shelo amar davar shelo shama mipi rabo leolam. But because he he never would state a lesson or a statement that he hadn't heard from his own predecessors, from his own teachers.
public.
Okay. Right?
In the yeshiva, he did. but
Well,
in
we'll get to that.
public, he never.
We'll see. All right. Heichi avid hachi. How is it that what happened? Va'amar Rabbi Eliezer. And says Rabbi Eliezer, ein yotzin misukah lesukah. But we thought Rabbi Eliezer said that one doesn't go from one sukkah to another. And here it seemed like he did. What happens? Regel echad havi. Okay, we're talking about a certain holiday. Okay, va'amar Rabbi Eliezer, and he said, right, mishabeach ani et ha'atzlanim she'en yotzim mibatein b'regel. That I commend those who are in quotes lazy, that they don't leave their homes on the holiday, right? Shabbat havi. That was in regards to Shabbos.
This visit was on Shabbos.
That was the situation. Vatif shot lay mididei. Okay, and one can resolve this from his view. The Tnan as taught what happens. The following: Pakak hachalon. Okay, the window shade, right? Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Bisman Shekashur V'talui, Pokakin Bo, V'im Lav Ein Pokakin Bo. That while it is connected, okay, tied to the window itself, one can handle it, close it, right? Remember, theirs were more like shutters attached, so you could pull it and close the one, right? The Chachamim Omrim, but the sages say, Bein kach uvein kach pokaki.
Doesn't have to be.
Okay, it doesn't have to be attached. All right, and what happens is we finish up. Okay, for today in the top of Kaf Chet, very briefly, Hatam hu dimavater. Okay, in other words, it nullifies the shade as part of the house. Valhacha, but and when we say here, in this case, okay, the putting his having put up the sabine, the sheet, the lo mevatel lo, where it doesn't nullify, okay, the sukkah. No, that's not the case. It is not, since it's not part of the sukkah, and it's not really part of the fitting of the facility, it's not the.
But it wasn't a problem with making the note.
In other words, it's not a problem.
It's a Shabbos problem.
It's a
If
Shabbos.
he puts the sheet on, it's being, and that, but maybe it's not. That
Okay.
was
What's the purpose of saying,
Because it wasn't to cover the sukkah, it was just to block the shade.
what's the purpose of saying never repeated anything that you didn't do something?
In other words, why didn't he answer? Remember, 2 or 3 times, this Yochanan has been asking about putting the, right? So he didn't really answer him. He didn't answer and he changed the subject. So the question is, did he not answer him because he disagreed with him? The Gemara is explaining, no, that's not the reason he didn't answer him. He answered him because he didn't have an answer that he could share that was based on what he had learned from his teachers.
So we're saying Talmud is not supposed to know that?
No, we're not saying that. We're saying what Rabbi Eliezer's practice was, that he only repeated publicly.
But it seems to be said as a shvach. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
For Rabbi Eliezer, it was.
The Talmud never repeated.
For Rabbi Eliezer, it was.
And he would express his opinion. Publicly asking, he never did unless he could say.
What point does he begin?
Not only
Read the-
not only
the rest
an
tomorrow
authority,
we'll
his
go
Rebbe,
into that.
What?
not only an authority, but his Rebbe.
Yeah,
His
but no,
Rebbe,
well,
his
or another Rebbe.
Yeah, his particular, right. That was Rabbi Eliezer's.
See what they were, because his Rebbe had the same.
That was Rabbi Eliezer's view.